From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined, as always, with our super producer, Paul Mission Control Decant. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. We are returned. We are made whole.
They don't want you to know, the return. That's what this is. The reboot. Yeah.
Please do call it a comeback. Forget LL Cool J. Here's a question to start tonight. Who doesn't want to be more intelligent? Do you think anybody would say...
Is that a rhetorical question?
Yeah, it's an honest question. Who would ever be given the opportunity to, say, have an intuitive grasp of quantum mechanics and respond by saying, nah, I'm good?
Maybe it's not your thing. Like, I think there could be, or just maybe it's too much power, too much pressure to know all these things about the universe. I give it a pass.
I totally see what you mean. Like, I think overall everybody would love having a little more of an edge on whatever it is they're doing, right? Whatever it is making them money or making their family prosperous in the future, that kind of thing.
Well, that's more general. I'm talking about quantum mechanics specifically.
But yeah, I mean, well, yeah. Or even that superpower level kind of thing, right? We've seen that associated with superhuman movies, right?
Sure, like Limitless, for instance.
Is that the one where he's limitless?
Yes.
I'm going to make that joke every time. It's from The Office, but I love that joke.
But there is something to this, I think, that we should ponder as we go throughout. Often, some of the most genius human beings that have lived ride that line between madness and genius, right? Where maybe knowing more and more and more could make you either more depressed or more, you know what I mean?
That's absolutely true.
All right. Yeah. No, I hear you.
I think it's a balance. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's sort of the more money, more problems, or the intellectual or spiritual version of that. Like, the more you know, the more problems you see, and then the more like insane things make you because you know what's possible. You know,
the more complicated everything becomes in real time.
Mm-hmm.
The more you know, the more you know. And those are not necessarily a good end result, right? So we arrive at this question. It's funny, this kind of idea of a Faustian bargain. The majority of human beings, I would posit, would, up to a certain level, make some sacrifices for the idea of easily acquired acumen, expertise, or knowledge. You know, if someone said, would you give up the ability to speak aloud if it made you good at math? Not everyone would say yes. But if they said, for instance, would you sacrifice your left pinky toe to know any instrument? Because it's the least important toe.
Yeah, but then what about the instruments that require the use of your left pinky toe?
That's really good.
See, that's where the monkey's paw
that's exactly right.
has a finger curled down. In tonight's episode, we are continuing a conspiratorial exploration of a very controversial thing known as the modern dietary supplement industry, and we are focusing on this idea of improving a thing people still can't define: the nature of intelligence, the idea that the ingestion of certain substances can improve the function of your brain right now. These things collectively are known as nootropics, Nootropics. Get ready, folks. It's a weird one. Here are the facts. All right, people have always been trying to sort of get better, right? Or get good, as we say in the world of gaming.
Man, I had a really fun conversation with our buddy Frank the other day about how, like, the human ear, or like the human hearing abilities is represented by a certain range. And he posited that what if there were a thing you could do to make your brain perceive a larger range of sound? Like, is it a question of the equipment's, limitations, or is it a question of the programming's limitations? Like firmware updates, on a piece of hardware.
Ooh.
I don't know the answer. I do think maybe the human ear mechanics is limited to a certain range, but there are other things that maybe we have the potential to be able to do, but there's not the programming, not the software. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that's because the brain is in a lot of ways, it is hardware, right? But it is software based, because if you think of language and all of these things, we'll get into it, because language hasn't always been around, right? Humans have been around for a long time, and they've been trying to improve since we started.
I'm a fan of man. Hashtag no devil's advocate. I am a fan of the human strive,
I thought you said, I'm a fan of man. Like, I like the soft drink Fanta the best. That's my. So I thought you were doing a thing, but I'm a fan of man as well.
Who are you carrying those bricks for, Kevin? Human history has been a study in self-improvement since the first time they domesticated fire. And we got to get this out of the way. Modern humans, to your point, Matt, predate what we recognize as documented history. Like, you go back far enough. So the average, like, if you're listening to this and you're human, then you're Homo sapien-esque or whatever early mixtape. It goes back to 300,000 years or so, basically. And documented human society is a very small portion of that. So a great deal of human invention, innovation, trial and error, it is lost. It is gone. It is restricted to myth and legend. If you look back post-bicameral mind argument, then we'll see that the human ancestors were just as intelligent as the modern humans today. And people still don't know what intelligence is. Like, it's easy for us to look back in 2024 with the benefit of retrospect. And we have to realize that as you are listening to this now, you are standing on the shoulders of ancestors, the vast majority of whom are dead. And all the modern benefits, all the things that make humans seem quote unquote smarter now, they're a result of a lot of people screwing up, and maybe one out of, just cocktail math here, maybe one out of 100,000 figured out something cool.
I guess that's part of my question, or my point maybe, is like about the nature of human physiology over time. Like, certainly we've developed parts of our brains that over time have gotten bigger, because of certain tasks we no longer had to do. And then parts of the brain that no longer need to do that thing can evolve to do another thing, and et cetera. So, I mean, I'm not a brain scientist, but I know that there are studies that look at the development and the evolution of the human brain. But the majority of that stuff is caused by ideas and exchanges of ideas and concepts and things that are learned behaviors, right?
The modern human benefits from things like better control over the environment, better access to education, progress toward the eternal struggle for sanitation and public health. Like, let's be honest. If you are hearing this now, fellow conspiracy realist, please understand, you would not be some crazy awesome wizard if you traveled back in time. And that's not a ding on anybody. It's just noting that most of us today as individuals do not understand the breakthroughs from which we benefit. We would be hard put to replicate those breakthroughs and innovations if you traveled back before the invention of steel. Do you know how to do that? Do you know how to make steel? Right. I mean, I think we just, civilization maybe looks down or looks askance on people of the past. And it's especially rich when we understand we do not have actionable definitions for intelligence or consciousness. We do know some people appear to have knacks for certain genres, we could call them, of intellect. Like some people have innate musical talent. Right now, as you're listening, we're very privileged to have some real titans here. Like, no, Matt, I'm not blowing smoke. You guys are incredibly talented musicians. You're super good at it to a level that not everybody can attain realistically.
Even that's a nature nurture question too, because I mean, like I grew up with musician parents and I was constantly surrounded by it. But I mean, Matt, I don't know your situation, but you know, you certainly made choices early on to improve those abilities. Maybe you had some of it innate, but then you got good at it by repetition and by like being in the jazz band and playing drums and being in bands and stuff, right?
Yeah, a lot of those kinds of skills end up being, like you said, a choice to improve. But I would just say anybody who is skilled in those things deals with the same things that are also innate to all these humans that follow that trail all the way back. Things like boredom, like mental boredom, physical stress and like being tired, right? And like being exhausted and worn out, and all of the things that, you know, we could, if we could improve, right? Not getting bored, not getting tired, those kinds of things that you could use drugs for. There could be major benefits to anyone trying to improve in one thing or another, whether that's music or, you know, understanding mathematics more or whatever the pursuit is.
Yeah, great point, Matt. Also, some people seem to intuitively understand math. In colloquial, I guess in Western society, they call it having a knack for a thing. We also know the human animal is, out of all the animals living, the human animal is the thing that said, I don't have to spend millions of years evolving. I can create tools. The human is the great artificer. The human says, I will build things to better my experience. The human is the machine that seeks to hack evolution. It is a machine that is built to improve upon itself, which hadn't happened before in provable history. And, you know, humans have spent a lot of time on this endeavor, on this hustle. You know, there are efforts like eugenics, which is problematic, deep stain of racism and pseudoscience. And then there's stuff like, you know, humans always figure out how to do more with less. Remote work is an example of that. Drone warfare and mass surveillance are examples of that. Social media manipulation, certain chemical substances. Humans love a chemical substance. They're not alone in that one. Dolphins get high. You know, elephants get drunk. Humans are figuring out some really weird stuff.
Yeah, speaking of the music side of things, I actually had a really interesting interview when I was traveling into this music festival, and these two really incredible producers, this guy A.G. Cook and this dude who goes by Sega Bodega, were having this really cool conversation about their creative process. And Sega Bodega, who's this, I think he's Irish producer, whose real name I don't remember, he was saying, like, you know, a lot of what inspires him is this idea of why do we have to sleep? Like the question of why can I supply myself with all the nutrients that I need to subsist and be supposedly, you know, have enough calories or whatever to keep me going. And yet no matter what, eventually, inevitably, I am going to have to sleep. And people take drugs like amphetamines and uppers and even energy drinks to try to not sleep as long as possible. But inevitably that bill comes due and the human machine needs to power down at some point. So that's the whole limitless idea, is what if we could do something like get rid of the need to sleep entirely? Think about how much more productive we'd be, you know?
Or if you could remember absolutely everything that you read.
Yeah.
Right? Like, can you take a substance that gives you a more photographic memory?
And here we get to the crux of it. We're not talking about substances like LSD or, synesthesia, producing hallucinogenics. We're not talking about recreational drugs that might alter your mind state in an enjoyable way that makes you maybe feel a little better at things than you actually are. We're talking about a group of compounds that could, in theory, make that you a better you. Higher executive functions, like you're talking about, Matt, better attention, better listening skills, an ability to focus, to retain, to synthesize information, perhaps even unto the idea of eidetic or photographic memory. This brings us to nootropics, an attempt to fix processes or improve processes the humans do not yet fully understand. So tonight's question, can a pill really make you limitless? We'll pause for a word from our sponsor. Here's where it gets crazy. I guess it depends on what we mean by fix. Fix.
Yeah. We have seen nootropics defined in a bunch of different ways. We've got a couple here that it's pretty much what Ben described right before we went to the break. These are substances, an umbrella term for substances that purport to boost creativity and memory and cognitive abilities of all sorts. Any brain function, basically, or anything you could tie to your brain having power over whatever it is, nootropics might and probably would fit under that. And they're supplements, by the way. They're not drugs.
Some of them.
There are a few, but most of them are just supplements you get over the counter.
Yeah, the question is, the question people miss in a lot of these excited pieces of ad copy and these weird Silicon Valley TED Talks, they're conflating cognitive function, which we do understand, with intelligence, which we do not. Cognitive function is best defined as a series of distinct abilities and the measure of those abilities in your brain. So nootropics are often called on the street smart drugs, or memory-enhancing substances, or cognitive enhancers. I would like to give a very special shout-out to our long-running shadow producer, one of my favorite nootropics, caffeine.
Yeah, okay. Wait, really? So yeah, I mean, when I'm talking about like the ability to stave off sleep or to sharpen our mental acuity a little bit, I guess my initial go-to is something like caffeine or nicotine or cocaine. I mean, stuff that like the soldiers would take so they could go and like never have to back down, right?
Yeah, it's always a blitz, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's always Halloween in America.
Well, and for me, jumping in with caffeine is stuff like vitamin B6 and B12 and niacin and riboflavin. I'm not really sure why.
Taurine would be another.
Yep. Yeah. Chromium.
That sounds dangerous. Could you shoot some chromium right into my neck? It sounds like a laptop. B12, people get that, like, touring bands, for example, like Rock and Roll Lifestyle, right? They'll have a doctor on staff that'll shoot their ass up full of B12 when they're flagging a little bit.
Scientology will force you to ingest superhuman amounts of niacin. Also, I think the real kick people get from things like 5-Hour Energy Drink is a composition of vitamin Bs. And vitamin Bs makes me think of ingesting just bees. Please, folks, don't eat bees. Let them make the honey. Eat the honey.
Ugh, that's a very unpleasant thought. Swallow these bees and call me in the morning.
You never.
It might sting a little going down, but I promise it's worth it.
Perfect. Nootropics are again, as you were saying, Matt, they are a dangerously vague umbrella term. The term includes prescription medications, but it also includes a lot of supplements that have no sort of oversight whatsoever. They are in general going to be called nootropics if they again, purport to improve some aspect of your cognition, your thinking, your memory. Like St. John's wort will make you in a good mood, etc. Your attention, your creativity, your motivation. And we know that by far the most common nootropic substances are at this point stimulants. And the ones that are prescription, they're FDA approved. The Federal Drug Administration in the United States is currently on board with a bevy of nootropics as long as they are aimed at improving attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and symptoms of dementia or Alzheimer's. Yep. Those are the only ones that are kind of real.
Yeah, if you want some amphetamine salts, you can get those if you get a prescription, which is harder and harder to get nowadays for like
I would, but I keep napping, Matt. I keep doing my little naps.
Man, quit slacking off, dude. Get to it. Get limitless.
Every 2 hours, like take 20 minutes or whatever.
It adds up, right? Haven't people attempted things like that? Or like there's like, kind of hogwash lore about CEOs that only nap 5 minutes at a time or something like that?
Well, I know we dabbled in it. Ben, I think you went harder on the paint than I did. I tried for a little while back in the day doing that. I forget who we learned about. It was somebody really famous that we learned about did it pretty effectively.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about polyphasic sleep.
Yeah, not for me, man.
Genetically, I am one of the folks who doesn't jibe with the 8-hour every 24-hour formula. So, we'll see how it works out. But
only time will tell.
Only time will tell. The issue is that outside of the prescribed stuff, outside of those, like the Adderalls, the Riddleds, and so on, there are a lot of self-proclaimed nootropics that make some pretty bold assertions. And a lot of the prescribed stuff, a lot of the stuff the FDA and other regulatory bodies agree to, they still encounter what we call off-label use. Maybe we talk a little bit about off-label use, most famous example recently being Ozempic.
I mean, I've had a lot of experience with off-label use. Everything from like, this is sort of a thing for this, but it kind of works like an antidepressant. It seems to be really positive for some users. And, I think I've been open about the fact that I tried like what's a compounded version of one of those Ozempic type drugs, and it didn't work. Wasn't for me. I read too much about it and it freaked me out, and I discontinued very quickly. But I'm shocked. I went through a period of sleeplessness many years ago where I had really bad insomnia, and the doctor was more than willing to prescribe me something off-label that would help with my insomnia. It didn't at all, but it was shocking to Google it and realize what it was originally for, and they seem completely unrelated. It just, I don't know, goes to show that it really is kind of practicing medicine. What are you laughing at?
I'm looking at Ben's face. Ben was given just this really interesting...
I'm just listening.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry. I don't... You look so concerned about, like, oh my God.
What have those bastards try to do to you?
I know, exactly.
That's the thing. And I recently talked about too, like, my father and the situation with him being prescribed stuff off label for certain, psychological. I just don't care for it. It's like, that's what I'm getting at. It seems very improvisational is what I'm implying.
Yeah. Is medicine the space for jazz?
Oh,
yes.
Maybe.
It moves to the beat of jazz. It's a real cosmic gumbo medicine.
I was just rewatching The Righteous Gemstones, and there's a moment where Jesse Gemstone is like celebrating, and he goes behind his desk and he's like, all right, baby, I'm going to pop an Adderall. But like, as though it's just a drug that he has that he's not using for actually what he is supposed to be using it for. It's just, he's going to celebrate with it, I guess.
Yeah. Adderall. When you're here, your family.
Yeah, no doubt.
Sorry. Adderall is also, of course, I love that we're alluding to this, the historical weaponization of these substances in times of war, right? Like methamphetamines obviously played a huge role in World War II for sure, and in later wars. And spoiler, You don't have to write in if you don't want to, folks, but we have it on good authority. There are still some U.S. Air Force and U.S. Navy folks who are prescribed amphetamines for some long-range flights.
Something very similar.
Yeah, something not quite there. But these medications, when we're talking about off-label, what we're saying is some of the stuff that is used to treat dementia and ADHD, it's improving what is seen as a problem or a misstep. Yet in the off-label use, these medications can also be used by healthy adults as an attempt to boost mental functioning beyond what they see as its normal baseline. We go to the history. This is nuts. All right. So there's a guy named C.G. Georgia. Did you see the little pronunciation? Like,
oh man, it's great. No, it does seem Italian or Romanian, perhaps.
It sounds like us saying Georgia, the state, with an accent.
Georgia. Just like you say, I'm a fan of man from Georgia.
Wow.
Who are you carrying all those bricks for, Georgia? This guy's a Romanian chemist. He's a psychologist. He's often called the father of nootropics because he developed something called piracetam, one of the first known and proven cognition-enhancing drugs. It's part of a group called Racetam, and this stuff is developed originally to treat motion sickness. Kind of like how, what was it, Viagra was originally meant as some sort of cardiovascular medication.
Well, yeah, it's about blood flow,
Blood flow, yes, sir. Improving it. Give me all the blood flow you got.
And then damming it up in one very specific area.
And all these guys, all the people in those early studies who died, they died with the best boners of their lives.
Or if you want to use the scientific word, priapisms.
Yes,
I always like trotting that one out. I like
that's
trotting
the word.
Priapism. A troubling erection, an erection that lasts more than, what is it, Noel, like 4 hours?
I couldn't tell you the stats. I just do know that is the scientific word for a boner.
It's the boner that doesn't stop. It's the marathon.
Keeps on giving. Yeah.
Yeah,
which again, a lot of people that don't have erectile dysfunction take those pills to as a sex enhancer. Like it's a big thing in certain communities. It's considered a party drug, in a way. It's like poppers and boner pills, y'all.
Huh? Do you like my erection selection?
Wait, how many erections?
Sorry,
I don't think I know that one, man.
That's a Paul Rudd quote.
It's very funny.
You can find it.
Okay. Yes, famous friend of the show.
I'm not Googling that. Are you crazy?
Paul Rudd, connoisseur of erections. Also
staying young forever, by the way.
He's getting into acting, I hear.
Oh, stop it. We love Paul Rudd.
I love Paul Rudd. So, nootropics.
It's ageless, though. Speaking of nootropics, what's that guy got going on? Is he bathing in the blood of children or something? I mean, I know he seems like a lovely
Bathory thing was a rumor.
I know it was, but it's you got some people though, how they just look young forever. Is it just clean living? Is it genetics? Is it a combination of the two, or are these people just have the best super secret spy doctors that are giving them all the good drugs behind the scenes?
Can't comment. We can say that the etymology of nootropic comes from the Greek. So this Romanian doctor figures out piracetam and says, this is a whole new type of drug. The Greek word is nous for mind and trepien for to bend. In other words, this literally translates to mind-bending drugs.
Yes. Yeah. So cool. So Georgia said that nootropic drugs should have these following particular qualities, these characteristics, and you're going to hear a lot of the things that we've already been talking about in this list. Things like enhancing of ability to learn and memory. Also, enhancing the ability to, I guess, reject negative learned behaviors. So I guess this would be maybe in terms of like breaking addictions or, patterns of things that are not beneficial to us as humans.
Yeah. Breaking those, also protecting the brain against various physical or chemical injuries, such that if you got a real wallop on your cranium, the nootropic could perhaps help you bounce back a bit better.
Whoa. And also chemical injuries. So it kind of reminds me of those specific PB pills that we learned about that were taken or at least given to soldiers to prevent neurological effects of neurotoxins.
It's an interesting and fascinating, if ambitious, part of the classification. Also talking about the increasing the mechanics of certain regions of the brain, different mechanisms like tonic cortical control mechanisms.
What the hell is that?
We're very fun at parties. Tonic cortical control is the idea that your brain can improve the self-regulation of certain things when other chemicals intrude into your usual program.
Oh, so maintaining stasis in the face of maybe outside stimuli, right? In in drug form even, right?
They should also, to your point, Noel, they should also not include the adverse effects of other established, what we would call psychotropic substances.
Wait a minute. So they should be all good, positive stuff that makes you better with none of the side effects? This sounds made up, guys. I don't know. I think there's usually a push-pull in these things. If you get improvement in one thing, then something's coming down the line to kick you in the pants later. I don't know.
Absolutely not.
I don't mean to poo-poo this stuff, but it does feel a little too good to be true. That's how I feel about the whole Ozempic thing, and you're starting to hear it with people that are like, oh no, and now my stomach's digesting itself, and I can't eat cupcakes anymore, or else I want to vomit wildly. That's a side effect, y'all. I hate to tell you, that is a side effect.
And just to point out here, it's listed that sedation, as in, a lot of the actual over-the-counter substances that we get prescribed will make you a little more sedate in order to do something like improve your body's ability to repair itself or fight off infections or things like that, right? Or motor stimulation, Adderall, caffeine, all these other drugs that would be kind of considered nootropics, at least have been considered nootropics, are going to do that thing where maybe you're a little more jittery, or maybe your heart is beating a little faster.
That's true. A great example, paracetam is not approved by the FDA here in the U.S., but in the United Kingdom, it is a prescription drug primarily used for a condition called myoclonus, which is a little twitchy.
The muscles?
Irregular muscle twitching.
Wow.
But guys, that thing you're just describing, Matt, that dormant, that making you a little sedate so that your body can go into sort of a standby mode and repair itself. What does that remind you of? Sleep, maybe? It's another stand-in for
really
these
high
natural...
road nuts, bud.
I'm sorry, man.
I thought you were going to say just turn us off and then turn us back on, right?
Yeah.
Restarts. Even computers need it every now and again.
That's where
clears out the cobwebs.
That's where the blood flow medication comes in, right?
There we are. And so as we're noting, this is original specific criteria, but the term nootropics now refers to three large groups, entirely comprised of any, quote, natural or synthetic substance, end quote, that may have a positive effect on mental skills. If you're looking for the three categories, they're dietary supplements, synthetic compounds, and prescription drugs. Favorite sponsor of the show.
Oh,
just drugs in general. Drugs.
Just drugs. Brought to you by.
Guys, I've got a new tagline for drugs. Drugs. Just take them. They're good for you.
Drugs. Doing real, useful good.
Stupid.
Yes, we missed the yes. We're going to pause for a word from our sponsor. And we've returned. So let's go to some of the experts. John Hopkins Medicine, they got a lot of boffins, a lot of eggheads. One of them, Barry Gordon, MD, PhD. He's the director of the Cognitive Neurology, Neuropsychology Division there.
Ooh la la. Well, really?
Well, and also awesome.
No, I'm joking. It's amazing. It's amazing. Smart people are amazing. I'm totally
He strikes me as, education is not intelligence. He strikes me as a very humble, very very well thought out dude. And he says he said in a very diplomatic way, he advances the idea that this may be a bit of a gilded turd in some situations. He says there's no strong evidence that supplements being sold now, right, the first of our big three categories, there's no strong evidence that their supposed powers of efficacy are helpful. And he says further, there's not even a lot of science showing us that those are safe in the massive amounts in which they could be consumed. You know, like if you are looking at provable efficacy for these sorts of substances, then you are looking generally at things that are mitigating what we would call human cognitive dysfunctions, treating ADHD, right? If you don't have ADHD and you take Adderall, then you're kind of taking speed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's amphetamine salts, baby. That's what they do.
Jacks you up. I've always thought it was bizarre. I mean, to your point about off-label stuff, right? Even that term to me just has to exist constantly with quote thinkers. But like, how come if you genuinely have this condition, this stuff calms you down, but if you don't, it just does the exact opposite? I've always found that fascinating and bizarre.
Mm-hmm. And here in the United States, nootropics are a lot like other dietary supplements. They seem to promise a great many things, but they don't have any consequences for lying to the customer. You know, it's not prescribed medicine. There's not formal testing nor verification by reputable independent entities. Just a few years ago, the FDA and the FTC said, hey, everyone in the world, please watch out. There are frauds and scams afoot.
Yeah. I mean, just as we talked about with supplements before, the FDA will generally, or, you know, the FDA doesn't regulate, right? But generally, you can get away with putting whatever you want on your supplement as long as it's not crazy, right? As long as it's not super out there. And you can have a study, let's say a clinical study that shows one particular component in your specific nootropic drug had some effect on some mice in one study at one time with brain cells that were maybe mice brain cells that were taken out, put into a petri dish. This substance, maybe amongst others, was applied to that petri dish and something good happened. So now...
Ooh, what was it, Matt? What was it? What good happened?
Well, there's an article in GQ written in 2018 by this guy, Jay Willis, that took a bunch of different nootropics and tried them all. And he just pointed out that you can write on these bottles or these packages stuff that sounds great, like improves memory, and just tie it in some way or another to some one-off study. And as we've learned in this show, one-off studies generally don't mean jack unless you can do it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, like longitudinal studies. Yeah, no, never.
Longitudinal studies. Yes.
No, it's true. It's basically like a sample size of one. You know, it's like, oh, if this, it just. I think you said it best, Matt. It's absolutely meaningless. But also, a lot of these supplements, while they are regulated by the FDA, they don't receive the same scrutiny and need for like clinical trials and anything like that as something that would be prescribed. And in the United States, it feels like the line between those things sometimes really blurs too, because some of the stuff that gets prescribed starts to feel a little more like pie in the sky, you know, kind of sorcery, right?
Yeah, well, and if you don't have to
label, I'm going to keep harping on that. It makes me mad.
well, even if you don't have to do a double-blind placebo controlled study, then your substance, all it has to do is 50% of the time make somebody feel like their memory's better.
Foreshadowing.
Right? Sorry.
Could be as low as 30%.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just if it has just an uptick a little bit in your whatever studies you did internally, then you're good to go. Write it on there. And think about how much people want the stuff we've been talking about today.
Bro, I'm so solution oriented. I tell you what, if this startup just needed me to only sleep 2 hours out of 24 hours, then we would get all the venture funding capital we need.
Think about how much cocaine.
So listen, he's going to look kind of like an anthropomorphic sperm and have little Olympic rings around his tail and have giant cartoon eyes and oversized sneakers. Yeah, sell it.
What about the torch? The torch doesn't do flames. It does stars.
Oh, we're so smart.
We're talking about the 1996 Olympic Atlanta mascot.
Oh, yeah. And also, they're giant robots, but they're also cars and they're aliens. It's going to be awesome.
Well, I got a question. How many explosions are there?
Not enough. That's for sure.
Let's up the explosions. Get the numbers up. So anyway, it should be no surprise that nootropics are a cause célèbre in Silicon Valley, new tech world overall. There was this great Atlantic article by Olga Kozin, credit where it's due, that has a profile of a guy who founded a company that distributes nootropics. It's called Nootroo, Nootroo.
Of course, it's really cute. Nootropics already sounds goofy as hell. It sounds like, I don't know. It sounds like a cream or something that you'd put like to a rejuvenating cream.
Yeah, they haven't sold the cream yet, but the topical application of nootropics is a very interesting field. You may be the first to post on this one.
Oh, geez. Always on the cutting edge.
So Eric Motzner, it's 2011 and he is running a one-man startup, basically. He's doing all the code. He's writing ad copy. He's teaching himself. He's taking calls with, angel investors and whatnot. And by his own admission, he's dependent upon prescription amphetamines and then later anti-narcolepsy drugs. And he has this moment, this revelation. Paul, can we get a epiphany sound? Perfect. He says, I don't need to just stay awake for longer. I need to be able to learn more quickly, to retain and to synthesize information.
Well, like freaking, I almost called him Johnny Mnemonic, like Neo in the Matrix, or it's like he knows Kung Fu. Just download that right into my brain.
Yes, a way to help him instantly memorize and synthesize new information and furthermore to encode that in long-term memory. So Kazan notes that he switches to good old Giorgio's hit Paracetam, and then he says, look, my attention span's improving. I'm better at listening. My reaction time is better. And so he starts going deep into like the wetware biohacking forums that we've talked about previously. And he says, I want to make a better stack. A stack is
full stack, baby.
A stack is what we call the regimen of substances that people ingest in an attempt to improve their cognitive function.
All this stuff really, too, makes me, I know it's highly influenced by the Matrix and a lot of this kind of cyberpunk writing, but the game Cyberpunk, it's all about these implants and these wetware and how can we, jack them up and add more implants to allow us to be limitless, to have, and only the wealthy can have the higher quality implants. They're always kicking the asses of the poor kids.
Yeah, it also goes back to the art and science of coding. Right? It's like software coding, because if you think about the term stack in that realm,
that's what I was saying. Full stack.
It's the series of pieces of software you are going to use to build out your code, right? Exactly
right.
And if we're thinking about these substances as literally changing our software to improve, I guess, our hardware, it makes so much sense.
We were saying all this at the top of the episode. I mean, it's absolutely, yes. It's so interesting, terrifying. And then the whole gatekeeper aspect of it becomes part of the conversation of who can afford it, who gets the best drugs. It's becoming the case already with things like Ozempic. It's so expensive. Insurance won't pay for it. You're starting to see all these celebrities taking it. But like your average person that maybe are morbidly obese and could benefit health-wise, not just aesthetically, can't afford it. Or they don't have the right diagnosis to get insurance to pay for it. That's just the tip of the iceberg with this kind of stuff.
Yes, agreed, unfortunately. And it does, look, when this guy launches Nootroo, he is motivated.
True. Sounds like a
He is motivated by what he feels is his personal lived experience. And if you listen to the speeches he's made, if you read the interviews, he wants to bring this to the people. In 2014, he launches this company. He relocates to San Francisco, home of great ideas. Anyway, these businesses are operating in a gray area. And a lot of them, obviously, are being run in good faith. These folks are not necessarily trying to sell harmful snake oil or fake panaceas. But in this gray area between dietary supplements and prescription drugs, business is booming. It's a very young industry. It is no surprise that not all these claims hold up to scientific scrutiny.
Guys, I have another good tagline for San Francisco. It's where ideas go to kill us all.
I like it.
Sorry.
Yeah, San Francisco. Can you believe it was on purpose?
Mm-hmm. There's some things about it that are cool. Boy, has it been overrun. And boy, is it this it's this gold rush on these kind of half-baked, biotech-y, implanty, not, AI kind of not fully thought out ideas.
I would be real with you guys. I've never watched a documentary on San Francisco. I've never looked that deep into, I guess, the
history
major
of it
movement.
As a city.
The major movement out there as Silicon Valley, right? I think I've maybe a little bit, but I can't recall any of it. I need some nootropics, guys. But it strikes me as a super interesting place because of the climate there, or because of the weather there. And it's a little bit colder. And especially when you're thinking about having giant server arrays or something where you don't have to spend so much money on all the cooling. I mean, you do, but not in the same way as if you were in a giant, LA
with great
box.
Affection, I don't think they're sweating the air conditioning just yet.
I think it's more about the marketplace of ideas. For whatever reason, they converged there at some point. And, because if you've ever watched that show, *Halt and Catch Fire*, which is excellent, sort of like a fictionalized version with some real stuff thrown in, alternate history, I guess. There was a Silicon Valley of Texas. It was the Silicon Prairie. And then there was Silicon Valley, out out West, and obviously out West won. But I don't really know either, Matt, what led to San Francisco becoming such a ground zero for that. Maybe having to do with the program at an institution, but then you think it'd be MIT. You think it'd be somewhere like Boston, which also is a huge, hub for that kind of stuff with Boston Dynamics and all of that.
I just need to learn more. And I need a substance that'll help me do it.
Yes.
Or a substance that will help you feel that you are doing better at the thing.
I'll take it.
Yeah. There's a literature review in Nutrients, which is a great scholarly journal. And a literature review is just when well-educated or well-read on experts look at all the stuff and then say, what's the skinny? It's an executive summary, right? Which tech bros love. And I do want to say before we continue that I find Eric Matzner quite impressive. I think his mind is in the right place. I don't think he's trying to be a con man. It's important to remember that. But in this scholarly review in Nutrients, what they found is the evidence for long-term safety and effectiveness of many things called nootropics. Science is just not there. It's not saying they're bad for you. It's saying we don't know whether they actually work. And this brings to mind the ever-present implications of the placebo effect. You haven't thought about the implication. Placebos means I will please in Latin. Drugs that purport to treat a condition, the story of them is pretty interesting. The name comes from basically hiring people to pretend to be sad at funerals, and the mourners were fake. And the term then, it made you feel that your loved one was actually loved and was being grieved.
It made you feel less weird about grieving openly, probably.
Right. Now you are one of several. What a good person has passed. And this eventually came to be applied to fake drugs.
Yeah, and then there's the lesser known but equally and oppositely fascinating nocebo effect, which is a situation where a negative outcome happens because of belief that the drug or intervention will cause the negative outcome. Irrelevant. I just think it's interesting. Just wanted to throw it in.
Just read The Secret. You'll get all of this.
Mm-hmm. And if you haven't read The Secret, you're not thinking in the right way to attract that book to you.
It's a secret.
I'm being
not supposed to know about it.
Anyway, so yes, Secret, the Fight Club of metaphysics, whatever. I love that you're pointing out nocebo effect. Check out our earlier episode. Is the placebo effect getting stronger? What we know is that physicians do use placebos, typically in the form of vitamins that are not necessarily going to be bad for you in moderate amounts. And
or literally just sugar, right?
Or just, blue sky pills, just sugar pills. We do know, going back to the earlier point, that placebos acquired what we would call a meta-efficacy, because in double-blind studies, they are useful for proving whether or not an actual drug works. Do we want to explain what a double-blind study is?
It's kind of like it was like the Pepsi challenge, right? Basically. But can you give it to us in more scientific terms, Matt?
Oh, well, yeah. You have a group of people that you're going to be testing this new drug on. You give half of them your actual drug. You give the other half sugar pills, let's say, and you don't tell anybody who's got the real drug. And then everybody reports their findings, how this drug is making them feel. And you've got on your little secret list which of these folks actually took the drug. And those are the ones that you actually write it all down. And then you have to compare, right?
Well, and it's, obviously an important method, but it also can suck because a lot of these things are trials where the people that apply to be part of the study really want the real drug. It's the one that could maybe cure their cancer or whatever, but they get the sugar pills, and that's the risk or the roll of the dice there. It's not inherently cruel, but the outcomes can be, not great.
Well, yeah, it depends on what you're testing. But
science has never been a study of individuals.
Fair enough.
It's very true, and it's also been a little cold. Just in a way, it's kind of messed up, but it has to be. Yeah,
it has to be.
But the whole point is, in those double-blind tests, your substance has to beat that placebo effect, to beat that sugar pill.
By an order of magnitude, right? I mean, it's like, how do you even measure beating? I guess you're measuring lots of different metrics, and you're comparing them all, and there's lots of different criteria for the comparison, I'm sure. I just guess, yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, just turn it into aspartame and put it in the sodas.
Put it
Guys,
in the drinking water.
What if this corn syrup had more fructose?
Yeah. What if this engine oil is actually edible?
We were doing this research on this medication. Everybody got a boner, even the placebo guys.
A priapism?
Wait, what did you say? You mean so we're going to be billionaires is what you're saying?
Yes. And as many as 1/3 of all people respond favorably to placebos when they don't know they're placebos. And this proves to us, most importantly, that the mind is a drug all its own. Again, one of the first machines that seeks to actively improve itself. So we see the shadows of Limitless. We see the shadows of Flowers for Algernon. It is possible that people may be spending money on the chemical equivalent of monkey shines, but they feel different. They feel their memory is improving. And perhaps through the act of practicing memory, right? Perhaps through the cognitive exercise of using the mind, you are in fact improving, but you didn't need the magic pill. It's like that old story about the magic ballerina shoes. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that was one of my favorites growing up.
All right,
actually, I don't know that one.
I don't either. I'm joking.
Well, the idea is this kid gets magic shoes, and it turns out that the shoes weren't magic.
It was in him all along.
Yeah.
Okay, that old chestnut.
Got it.
Well, I'm just saying, by simply repeating repeatedly challenging the brain toward the accomplishment of mental exercises like puzzles, you improve your chances of avoiding certain types of cognitive decline. So if you were in part of a test, right, if you're in a double-blind study and you are taking the placebo, but part of the study is asking you to do puzzles, then by the nature of doing those puzzles, you're
getting the benefit.
Get the benefit or get some sort of benefit.
Do you think that any of this applies to like superstitious rituals that people do where they like, baseball players wear the same pair of socks because it makes them believe that they're going to be better and therefore they are better?
Yes.
Yeah. I think 100%. So too. I think so too.
I mean, we need more science on it.
Get some science on that. Yeah.
It's the pretty early stuff. Yeah. To be clear, I'm not saying we need to smell more baseball player socks.
Science that up. Science that. Yeah.
Oh, this is for science, baby. But we do see certain substances do appear to make improvements in the way brains communicate, retain, and synthesize information. However, we do not have a silver bullet for the humans. Like we don't know what the ideal dosage is to mitigate dementia. We don't know all the variables that are included in each little recipe that is a human mind. It shows us there's an opportunity for grifters, but it shows us, I think, a pretty exciting and maybe frightening horizon of possibility. Also, it's like our earlier conversation about virtual reality. Humans are attempting to improve something that they don't fully understand from the beginning.
Exactly. Like with the AI stuff too. I mean, and it's these young, money-obsessed whippersnappers in Silicon Valley that are the ones, pushing that agenda on the rest of the world, and like pushing that technology out there while fully acknowledging often that they don't understand where it's going and having people encouraging them, counseling them. No, maybe pull back a little bit. Let's not jump right down this rabbit hole yet. And that's okay. We'll deal with the outcome later. Let's push it, kick the can down the road. It's another example of that.
Well, let's talk about one particular substance that was, I think, interesting to all of us. Modafinil, I think is how you say it. This is the one where, let's say the United States military and several other countries' militaries were using amphetamines to, what do they call them? Go pills. And then the sleep, it was like uppers and downers. So we talked about this before in one of our episodes where we talked about drugs and war. Amphetamines back in the day were to get you up when it was time to be on duty or be, in battle or something like that. Then you take essentially a sleeping pill or a sedative to get you that downtime and sleep you need. If you've only got, let's say, 4 hours, 6 hours to be down before you have to go and do all that stuff again. Or if you're a fighter pilot or flying a bomber plane, halfway across the world to go drop bombs on somebody. They were using these drugs like amphetamines and sedatives, let's say. Modafinil came in, and that was supposed to be the brand new thing that is not as addictive as an amphetamine would be, right?
Lol.
Well, and theoretically, it's supposed to be safer, and that's why it was developed.
Yeah, like Oxycontin.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. It's fine. It's not addictive. It's better. It's good. Go ahead.
But it was a drug to treat other things. So Ben, you mentioned in this, I think did we talk about it in this episode already where it was for narcolepsy? Or it was one of those drugs that was to treat
anti-narcolepsy.
Exactly. But then this thing took on a life of its own as basically the new amphetamine that militaries and only a few select militaries and countries still approve it and its use, but it's still there and pilots still use it. And it's still, it's tried and tested basically in the minds of people who control a bunch of other human beings that are in militaries. What do you guys think about stuff like that, where it's a drug that does seem to have positive effects? It does have negative effects.
limited positive effects.
It's a balancing act, as with anything. And to your point about the go pills, up or downer thing, all of that still doesn't replace sleep, does it? It makes you go when you're up and maximize, but then you're so jacked up at the end of the day still because you've taken all these, goofballs that you got to take something to be able to get down. And you're essentially supplementing and replacing systems that already exist within you. And you're kind of causing your whole, mechanics of your brain to go haywire.
But if you're a company that can synthesize a substance like this and then package it, give it a cool name, give it some cool advertising, then you are literally creating a $1 billion or billions-dollar product.
Printing
right?
money, my friend.
Well, and you can just really see as we talk about a ton on this show, the incentive for profit that exists here, because it is fairly easy to say whatever you want if you're going the supplement route, right? And make a magic substance that's going to let everybody who sees your website or your YouTube ad or hears Alex Jones talk about you, or the way all of these different nootropics have been introduced to the world over the past, 20 years? I don't know. It seems like there's a ton of room for abuse.
Agreed. Here's the other question. If you could take a pill every day of your life and in doing so save yourself from cognitive decline, would you do it?
I think that's a yes. More so than the astrophysics question you posited at the beginning of the episode. I think that's something anyone could get behind. But then is that the fountain of youth, though? Is that living forever? Or is it just going to keep you from dying, not knowing what the hell's going on because you've got dementia or like some extreme, version of mental decline? I think anybody would want that for their loved ones. But then again, it becomes a matter of who gets it first and who stockpiles it. And if everyone gets it and everyone's living longer, maybe is that going to cause a burden on, resources? There's all kinds of questions about this kind of stuff. I don't know.
To another question. Especially, and Matt, maybe this is a future episode, the idea of military weaponization of drugs. We've talked about it in the past in previous episodes. Question for the group, those of us playing along at home as well. How often do you think that military medical professionals have been out of supplies and given someone a placebo?
That's an interesting question. I have no idea.
If you know they're going to die, and the actual drugs are limited.
I see what you're saying. Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, like why waste a morphine syringe if that's rough, because they're part of that. All these, even in films, seems to be an act of humanity. To let your fellow man down easy, to let and not suffer in that final agonizing moment.
But in the case of these drugs, it's more about making sure that individual is alert enough to know where fire is coming from.
That's right.
Right.
You're talking about raising awareness for a limited time, the cost-benefit ratio being that the individual under the influence of those things will physiologically pay for it later, if not cognitively.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that still happens. And that's a very good point, and I'm glad you made it. I think the most maddening question, if you discovered something that could make any old Charlie Gordon flowers from Algernon type into a Nikola Tesla, even if just for a limited amount of time, even if it absolutely wrecked their brain within, like over the long term, would you be allowed to propagate this to the public? Would you be allowed by the powers that be to put a genius drug out there, knowing that it could upend civilization? It is just possible that something like this exists. They're on the bleeding edge of science.
And if you want to do your own research, there's a great place to start. Definitely not the end-all be-all location, but if you head on over to the Nootropics subreddit, that's reddit.com/r/NOOTROPICS. They've got a beginner's guide that lists out most of the known nootropics that are out there. It's not all of them, but it talks about stacking, as we mentioned in this episode, which ones to try. We do not recommend anyone take drugs ever, but if you are interested in this stuff, especially the supplement side, that's a good place to begin your search.
Agreed. And while you are online, we would love to hear your experiences. Full disclosure, folks, Paul, Matt, Noel, and I may have differing personal experiences with this kind of, let's call it gray market field. But we do want to end with this. We are not medical professionals. As Matt said, do your own research. Your brain, for now, is your own. In the meantime, while you are online, we would love to hear from you. We would love your thoughts. In lieu of beaming them directly to us now, try.
Yeah, or transcranially.
Do your damnedest. Yeah.
TCDS. I am a huge fan of that, as well as TMS.
Love TGIF. Great.
In lieu of that,
find
us online while people still use their hands to type.
You can find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook, or we have our Facebook group. Here's where it gets crazy on YouTube. We've got videos coming at you every single week, and on XFKA Twitter, on Instagram and TikTok. You might ask, what are we? Well, we are Conspiracy Stuff Show.
We have a phone number that is functioning, and you can call right now. Try to do it when it's a little quiet around, not in a car that's very loud that causes feedback and other problems.
No.
Actually, a car doesn't cause feedback. That'd be another audio issue. It just causes a lot of noise. Call 1-833-STDWYTK. When you call in, give yourself a cool nickname that we'll remember and put in our system. You've got 3 minutes, say whatever you like. Do please let us know if we can use your name and message on one of our listener mail episodes. If you got more to say, they can fit in that 3 minutes. Why not instead send us a good old-fashioned email? We are
the entities that read every letter we get. Be well aware, sometimes the void writes back. Conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.